stranded cars and even flooded homes. Those are just some of the problems caused by last night's heavy rains in southern New Mexico.
It's a quick snapshot of Roswell's stormy weather. The most rainfall the city has seen in more than 60 years.
This is one last night, just east of us. This was that was a picture every second.
Daniel Fuller caught part of the storm on his GoPro.
I've lived here about 20 years, and I have never seen flooding like this before.
And this photo shows more flooding in Roswell. The water is up to the doors of those cars.
How long have you all lived here?
Oh, 12 years.
Have you ever seen flooding like this?
Not like this, no.
Southeast Texas is at risk for more flooding this morning after violent storms killed at least one person. Thunderstorms unleashed heavy hail in San Antonio Tuesday. Cars took a beating.
In Houston, a second straight day of drenching rain flooded the downtown area. Winds hit 60 miles an hour. Floodwaters are creating unusual dangers.
The rain pounded St. James Parish for quite some time today, too, causing widespread flooding there.
Caskets from the cemetery on Belrose Lane floating away from their resting places.
The rain started before dawn. Severe storms that dumped a deluge on St. James Parish. Drainage ditches overflowed, streets flooded. But the bigger story is that over 60 homes and businesses have been flooded. There was so much rain it quickly overwhelmed the drainage system. Parish residents, sheriff's deputies, even the parish president all said the same thing. They've never seen anything like this.
From the Dakotas all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, they are cleaning up after a round of severe weather, tornadoes, hail, and it comes just as we all now brace for something else, the beginning of hurricane season.
Overnight, skies alive from the Canadian border to the Gulf of Mexico. Almost 400 severe weather reports this week that have brought us some stunning images. Hail covering roads as far as the eye can see in North Dakota.
Look at that, dude.
That striking EF2 swirling through that RV park, injuring 9.
We've got some amazing video to show you. A young man who's lucky to be alive. Scott Shepard was in South Dakota taping this thunderstorm, and watch this. Lightning hits him, travels through his arm. That's debris from the pavement that knocks a hole in the ground where he was standing. His phone kept working. He was alive. It disabled the car that was passing by him.
And today, the president at a briefing with FEMA.
As hurricane season begins, we have to remember that responding to a hurricane is a team effort.
Reminding all of us that now is the time to prepare for what NOAA says will be a season with 8 to 13 named storms, 3 to 6 hurricanes, and 1 to 2
Who had ever heard of the vortex in New York, right, before that weird weather? The incredible heat that Australia has suffered, the floods in the UK, and you name it, and goes on and on and on and on. Frankly, there's no country that has been exempted from very strange weather over the past, let's say, 1 or 2 years. And these very strange extreme weather events are going to continue both in their frequency and in their severity. It's not that climate change is going to be here in the future. We are experiencing climate change, and we are already faced with severe impacts both on the economy as well as on human beings, and we can no longer afford not to take very, very clear action.
Can we read into that that we need, it needs disasters like Sandy and Haiyan to wake us up to action on climate change? Is that the horrible reality of it?
There is no doubt that that experiencing these weather events, which I call experiential evidence of climate change, does raise the issue to the highest political levels. And it does something else, which I think is actually, it's unfortunate that we have to have these weather events, but there is a silver lining, if you wish, because these weather events, what they remind us is that solving climate change, addressing climate change in a timely way is not a partisan issue. It's not like these weather events affect those who are on the left of the political scale or those who are on the right. It doesn't matter where you are in the politics, nationally or internationally, you get the same impact. The longer we wait to have policy that positively affects the trajectory of emissions, the more of these events we're going to have. We need to understand that we are here in a transformation, the likes of which we have never seen. And it is a transformation that it truly is a completely new economy to what we've had over the past 100 years. But that we have a ticking clock in front of us. So you need to be impatient, the good impatience, and you also need patience.
Are you patient?
You know, I was not born as a patient person, but this job is definitely teaching me some patience. You also need to have no sleep. I am chronically underslept, but it is something that I love doing. It is something that I love doing because this is the most important challenge that humanity has ever faced. So many people say that's the most difficult job in the world. I say it's the most sacred job.
Around the world, activists are rallying for action on climate change. Tens of thousands filled the streets of cities like Melbourne, Rio de Janeiro, Berlin and Paris. Among those marching are celebrities plus world leaders. In New York, climate protesters plan to flood Wall Street on Monday, a day before the UN summit on climate
Get up! Get up! Marchers are still going strong. At the height of this march, thousands were lining the streets here of Midtown Manhattan. Why? They're trying to shine a light on the need to cut down on fossil fuels around the world. Now, the timing of this is significant. This week begins the UN General Assembly Council meeting here in New York City. Also, coincidentally enough, some top meteorologists last week said that this summer was the hottest on record for the globe. So that information fueling the cause for these folks in getting a handle on carbon emissions. The hope is that marches like this help the issue of climate change gain momentum. No agreement is expected to be signed at the climate change meeting happening at the UN on Tuesday. If anything, activists really just want to gain momentum. Here's what one had to say.
We're seeing droughts, massive droughts across the Midwest and California. We're seeing storms that are devastating the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. We're seeing flooding that's threatened this city and many others. All of those impacts are happening, but it is just a taste test of what's to come if we don't urgently reverse course. And the solution is so clear. It's to get to 100% clean energy-powered society and economy.
Marchers also included Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, Al Gore, and celebrities. Leo DiCaprio.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. I'm honored to be here today. I stand before you not as an expert, but as a concerned citizen. One of the 400,000 people who marched in the streets of New York on Sunday, and the billions of others around the world who want to solve our climate crisis. As an actor, I pretend for a living. I play fictitious characters, often solving fictitious problems. I believe that mankind has looked at climate change in that same way, as if it were a fiction, as if pretending that climate change wasn't real would somehow make it go away. But I think we all know better than that now. Every week we're seeing new and undeniable climate events, evidence that accelerated climate change is here right now. Droughts are intensifying, our oceans are acidifying, with methane plumes rising up from the ocean floor. We are seeing extreme weather events and the West Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets melting at unprecedented rates, decades ahead of scientific projections. None of this is rhetoric, and none of it is hysteria. It is fact. The scientific community knows it, industry knows it, governments know it, even the United States military knows it. The chief of the U.S. Navy's Pacific Command, Admiral Samuel Locklear, recently said that climate change is our single greatest security threat. My friends, this body, perhaps more than any other gathering in human history, now faces this difficult but achievable task. You can make history, or you will be vilified by it. To be clear, this is not about just telling people to change their light bulbs or to buy a hybrid car. This disaster has grown beyond the choices that individuals make. This is now about our industries and our governments around the world taking decisive, large-scale action. Now must be our moment for action. We need to put a price tag on carbon emissions and eliminate government subsidies for oil, coal, and gas companies. We need to end the free ride that industrial polluters have been given in the name of a free market economy. They do not deserve our tax dollars. They deserve our scrutiny, for the economy itself will die if our ecosystems collapse. The good news is that renewable energy is not only achievable, but good economic policy. This is not a partisan debate, it is a human one. Clean air and a livable climate are inalienable human rights. And solving this crisis is not a question of politics, it is a question of our own survival. This is the most urgent of times and the most urgent of messages. Honored delegates, leaders of the world, I pretend for a living, but you do not. The people made their voices heard on Sunday around the world, and the momentum will not stop. But now it is your turn. The time to answer humankind's greatest challenge is now. We beg of you to face it with courage and honesty. Thank you.
One day, we will wake up to find that the energy that powers the alarm clock came from the breeze through the trees the night before. And we will go to work that morning riding the rays of the sun. It will light our cities and power our businesses. It will warm our homes and cool our workplaces. It will reduce sources of conflict and fuel our economies. It will connect us all. It won't scar the land or poison the seas. The food we eat will be good for our bodies and good for the planet. And the weather that day won't make us worry for tomorrow. There will be more jobs and less disease. The sea level will stop rising. And species will stop dying. The question is, how do we get to that day from where we are today? All 7.3 billion of us. We start by deciding that beyond our doubts and differences, such a day truly exists. And that is something each of us can do today. We can make today the day we stop thinking that the changes required to get there are impossible and beyond us, and start realizing that they are not only possible, but what the future requires of us. We must stop turning from the warnings of science and fear and denial, and instead turn toward the solutions and partnerships we need. We can make today the day we stop pointing at each other in blame, and instead chart a new course together. We have never faced a crisis this big, but we have never had a better opportunity to solve it. We have everything we need to wake up to a different kind of world. We need our leaders to be brave and their choices to be bold. They will either remember us as the generation that destroyed its home, or the one that finally came to respect it. We have every reason in the world to act. We can't wait until tomorrow. This is our only home. You can choose today to make a world of difference.
Up until now,
climate change has mostly been a story about challenges. Challenges to our communities, challenges to our economies, and challenges to the natural environment that sustains life on Earth. But with challenge comes opportunity. Opportunities to live and work more sustainably. Opportunities to transform economies. And opportunities to shift to a low-carbon, climate-resilient future. But here's something that might surprise you. Action on climate change is not some far-off event. There is an enormous groundswell of action already underway to fight climate change. It's happening right now, all over the world. That's why climate change is also a story about hope. There are thousands of examples of people taking action to address climate change. We wanted to take a closer look at some of these people. By sharing their stories, they show us that action on climate change is creating green jobs, inspiring entrepreneurship, and creating ripples that spread across communities and economies. Take India, for example. In the slums of Bangalore, an organization called Pollinate Energy is creating green entrepreneurs and bringing solar lighting to the city's most vulnerable populations.
At Pollinate Energy, we're a social business that improves the lives of India's urban poor. We do this by providing them with access to clean energy technologies. In India, there's around 390 million people who don't have access to electricity, and we found that a lot of these people were living in non-permanent urban settlements with about 5 people in each tent, the size of your dining room table, and a perfect candidate for something like a solar lantern.
70-80 ರೂಪಾಯಿಗೆ ಲೀಟ್ರ್ ಅದು ತಂದು ಉರಿಬೇಕು ಅದನ್ನು ಈಗೇನು ಒಲೆ ಕತ್ತಲಾಗಿ ಇಷ್ಟು ಹಾಕಬೇಕು ಕತ್ತಲ್ದಾಗ ಕಣ್ಣು ಕಾಣಲ್ಲ ಈಗ ಇದು ಬೆಳಕಾಗಿಬಿಟ್ಟದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಉಳಿತಾಯನೇ ಮಕ್ಕಳೆಲ್ಲ ಬರಿತಾರೆ ಓದ್ತಾರೆ ಬೆಳಕಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಅಡಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ.
Here in Bangalore, we have a network of micro-entrepreneurs, which we call pollinators. They're from the areas around the communities. They speak the local language. They spend time with the communities explaining the products so that they can understand them. And then they provide them with a payment plan so they can pay the system, which costs $30 off over 5 weeks. The way that they keep track of this is through a mobile phone app. On top of the fact that they have a job and they can earn money, a big benefit is the fact that they now have a community and a sense of belonging.
ಒಂಥರ ಈ ಸಮಾಜ ಸೇವೆ ಮಾಡ್ದಂಗೆ ಆಗೋಗಿದೆ ಈ ಕೆಲಸ ನನಗೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನನಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಖುಷಿಯಾಗಿದೆ, ಹ್ಯಾಪಿಯಾಗಿ. ಅವ್ರ ಸಂತೋಷದಿಂದ ನಾನು ತೃಪ್ತಿ ಪಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಅವ್ರು ಖುಷಿ ಪಟ್ಟರೆ ನಾನು ಖುಷಿ ಪಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ.
So in India, there's around 390 million people who don't have access to electricity, and the aim is over the next 10 years to try to get to the 53 cities in India with more than 1 million people.
ಮೊದಲೇನು ಬದುಕು ಕತ್ತಲ್ದಾಗ ಹಂಗ ನಾವು ಹಂಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೊಂಟೋಗಿವಿ. ಈಗ ಇದು ಬಂದ್ಮ್ಯಾಗ ಬೆಳಕಾಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ.
Green entrepreneurship is the key to shifting to a green economy. In Ghana, green entrepreneurship is being propelled by women's leadership. The Bamboo Bikes initiative is building not only cleaner transportation options for Ghanaians, but building careers for rural women as well.
Bamboo Bikes is training girls in clean jobs and reducing carbon emission. We started as a women initiative. We are 3 women, and we got to know that women at the deprived communities they are suffering, especially in terms of economic empowerment. But they can use the natural resources within their villages or their communities to come out with projects that will really help them. So we are training them on how to build a bamboo bicycle. You know, bamboo bicycle doesn't produce a lot of carbon emission. It's a carbon zero because bamboo contains a lot of oxygen that balances carbon dioxide. The first step is we take you through the plantation, through on how to harvest the bamboo. Then after we take you to the workshop, we take you through a whole lot of process. At least should be 5 to 6 months. You should come out, you should produce as a prototype.
I love everything about the initiative because after school I was just in the house, I had nothing to do. But when I became part of it, I helped mommy buy 1 or 2 things to sponsor my sister's school fees.
Investing in a woman is not only the right thing to do, but the smart thing to do because Most women are community leaders and they are really making an impact for change in their communities.
In the last few years, we've seen unprecedented leadership by women who are rising to meet the climate challenge. In Australia, the organization 1 Million Women has one simple goal with big impact. Get 1 million women to save energy, cut pollution, and reduce waste in their daily lives.
1 Million Women is about inspiring women to take practical action on climate change. It's about taking bite-sized actions that have real and tangible outcomes. We focus on the things that we do in our daily life: food, fashion, shopping, travel, home energy, to cut waste, to cut pollution, and to save money at the same time. We focus on women that by global standards live very privileged lives in wealthy countries. We do events. We have a really big social media program.
And we're sharing stories, we're sharing experiences, and then you know that you're not alone. And the website is a wonderful way to do it, and Facebook, because it can literally be the women of the world doing this. And that's really powerful when you know that you are part of a much bigger movement for change.
We talk about things like how we're driving less, how we are managing our transportation so that we are able to drive less, how we're aware of the pressure to consume and trying to reduce the impact of that pressure to consume. Things like shopping local and in season, so you can actually use your money more wisely. So all of us have a choice when we have a $20 bill in our hands that we can actually choose to use that money for the good of the planet, or we can choose to harm the planet. And it is not that difficult a choice.
Our philosophy is to act in your own life and try to rise above politics to just get on with it. And action on climate change needs to happen from absolutely every level. Yes, it needs to happen from governments down, but it needs to happen from grassroots up, and it needs to happen all at the same time.
Sustainable progress is best achieved when local communities are directly involved in the decision-making process. In Bangladesh, ActionAid is leading an initiative that solves climate-related problems from the ground up.
Lalua is a village which is extremely vulnerable, being located in the southern delta, and this area is very dependent on rice cultivation, and that was being threatened. The community-based adaptation project was led by the women in the communities.
জলবায়ুর পরিবর্তন ফলে আমাদের এলাকায় বৃষ্টি সমস্যা, যেমন বৃষ্টির সময় মতন হয় না।
They have to address erosion, they have to address salinity, and they have to address the frequent floods and cyclones.
গণগবেষণা ঘরে বসে আমরা নারীরা বসে আলোচনা করি যে আমাদের এলাকায় কি সমস্যা হইতেছে। অগ্রগতি করার ফলে এগুলো আমরা সমাধানের চেষ্টা করি যে কোথায় গেলে এগুলো সমাধান পাবো।
The community for the first time realized that actually women could play this role, and the women started doing an assessment and come up with practical solution to address their problems.
কাজ করছি, যেমন পুকুরে পার উঁচু করছি, মিষ্টি পানি সারা বছর ধরে যে রান্নাবান্না কাজ করতে পারি। তারপর আর মিষ্টি পানি সংরক্ষণের জন্য সুলিজগিরের মুখে বাদ দিছি রবি শস্য কৃষি কাজ করার জন্য। তারপর বাংকার করছি, যে কোনো দুর্যোগের সময় আমরা বাংকারের জন্য আমাদের মালামাল রেখে আমরা আশ্রয় কেন্দ্রে যাইতে পারি।
They came up with the solutions which worked, which were practical. And today they have not only got food security because they are bringing in the rice, but they have saved and they have created a wealth for themselves. Any one of us would have difficulty surviving with such bare minimums. And not only are they coping, they're coming up with new solutions every day.
Living in an area threatened by climate change doesn't necessarily mean that the community must abandon the place that it calls home, but that adapting to a new set of circumstances is possible. The BOMA project helps women living in Kenya's arid north adapt to climate change by starting small businesses that help reduce their economic dependence on land threatened by drought.
At the BOMA Project, we work to help women earn an income so they can accumulate savings and survive drought.
Climate change has had a big effect on these communities.
What we're seeing in northern Kenya is what we think is happening across all the arid lands of Africa. The pastoralists are settling. Livestock is becoming less sustainable. So now the women and children are left back in the village to survive on their own because it's too dangerous to travel with the herds.
We wanted a lasting solution, BOMA offered one. And we wanted to empower the women, BOMA gave them that.
The women go through a 2-year period of mentoring. Our local mentors deliver training to them, business skills training, as well as savings training. When you go to see a typical BOMA business, you're going to see a small hut, and they're going to sell basics like washing powder, sugar, tea. In 2 years, women are able to double their incomes. And the most important thing is they're going to have savings so they can survive the drought periods, because the droughts are now coming too often and they're too severe.
And that's the whole goal of this program. We're graduating women from extreme poverty so that they can better withstand the shocks like climate change.
From the most vulnerable populations often come the most innovative ideas. In Ghana, an organization called Recycle Not a Waste employs the disadvantaged in poor urban communities to turn recyclable waste into eco-friendly goods.
Recnoa makes you think before you throw your waste away. One of our main projects is working with women groups. So what we did was that we took them through 3 months training on how to make beads from plastic waste. Old cassette tapes, old plastic in general. And what they do is that they melt them and then mold them into different shapes of beads. And then they sell it to the general public. They also give beads in single sessions to other people who would want to use it for different purposes. We consider waste not just as something we would have to throw away, but something which is more of a material in transition. With the plastic furniture, for instance, one single armchair could have about 400 to 500 bottles. That means that it's about 400, 500 bottles taken away from their dump sites. The sachet pack of water is the best to be considered by most Ghanaians. So it means that there's a lot of that waste that is produced. So Recnoa with our partners have developed other programs where we have some of these made into umbrellas. We've made raincoats out of that. We've made school bags, career bags for school children, and a whole other things we try to develop. Even though the urban poor are probably not employed, they are very creative people. They are very entrepreneurial. They are very determined to make something out of themselves, to make a living. So their desire to go through all of this helps them to come up with creative ways of using the waste that is collected or that is generated in their environment. So we put them into such a business so that they can collect that waste and then transform it into something profitable.
Taking action on climate change involves all aspects of our lives, especially how we use energy in our homes. Governments, too, have a role to play in residential energy use. In Mexico, the government has partnered with international development banks to encourage housing developers to build homes designed to decrease our carbon footprint before we even step out the door.
In the case of EcoCasa, we found, together with our partners, that the best way was to offer concessional bridge loans to developers that have a housing project that meets a certain level of emission reductions. The case of Mexico is particularly relevant because we can see these innovations happening in low-income housing.
Estamos participando con 1,000 casas. 750 en Héroes Capellanía y 250 en Héroes Monterrey. Nosotros nos hemos dado cuenta que no está peleada la sustentabilidad con el precio y con el dotar de una mejor vivienda a la población. Es una ecuación que se puede combinar muy bien. Desde hace poco más de 5 o 6 años hemos estado trabajando con calentadores solares, con reducción de agua, con reducción de calor en las casas, el aislamiento térmico, el tipo de acabados que le ponemos, las medidas adicionales en temas de sustentabilidad.
Decidimos comprar esta casa por cómo está hecha, ¿verdad? Y por la comodidad que nos ofrece. El ahorro energético es importante para nuestra economía, sobre todo. Pues ya no tenemos la necesidad de comprar algún aire acondicionado o otra cosa, ¿verdad? Para sentirnos más cómodos. Y ahora pagamos una cuarta parte de electricidad.
Nosotros sentimos que en el momento que esto se masifique y que podamos hacerlo de manera total para todas las viviendas que se desarrollan en nuestro país, definitivamente habrá menos emisiones y todo esto mejorará. Y esto se va a poder replicar. Estoy totalmente convencido.
Changing how an industry does business can be a daunting task, but EcoCasa shows it can be done. In the Philippines, the Sustainable Energy Finance Program is teaching banks the ins and outs of clean energy to encourage them to lend to sustainability projects.
Sustainable energy finance is all about teaching banks about energy efficiency and renewable energy.
There's still an apprehension of catering to these sustainable energy technologies, especially on energy efficiency and renewable energy.
Lending without the SEF is kind of difficult for us, for the banks in general, because we don't have the technical knowledge, technical expertise to handle these kind of situations. In the case of Star Mall here, it's a chiller project. We are not familiar with what kind of air conditioning units to use, what kind of power savings there will be. So that's where the invaluable support of the IFC people comes into play.
The project is completed and it's realizing close to $70,000 a month in energy savings. Excel Farm is a piggery where pig manure is used to generate electricity through biomass energy.
Most of the houses you see in this farm are climate controlled, as we call it. It's very electricity intensive operations where they have to consume a lot of energy to keep the houses cool. And with this project, what happens is you can utilize the waste to focus cold air on the pigs.
We're not actually teaching the banks to be engineers, but making them understand. By helping their clients improve their energy costs, this product will actually help them increase their loan portfolio and acquire new business as well.
The role of governments in taking action on climate change isn't just policy-oriented. They can provide incentives to businesses and citizens to act sustainably as well. In China, the Clean Development Mechanism Fund is a national climate fund that leverages private sector investment in clean energy projects and supports low-carbon growth across the country.
China's CDM Fund is National Climate Fund, mandated to support efforts to tackle climate change. It ensures that a large portion of revenues from international CDM transactions can be reused to support low-carbon development in China. The fund acts as seed money and bridges public and private partners. It will also help introduce innovative tools and spark great ideas.
Under the Chui Jiangsu project, we have issued 6 loans. The total number is 125 million RMB.
整个5000万贷款呢，解决了我们整个建设过程中的一些固定资产投资问题，是吧？有力的支持了这个项目，是吧？并且保证了它的顺利建成和投产。该项目呢是热电联产项目，一边是呢用秸秆燃烧发电，另外一个呢多余的蒸汽呢就用于整个热力的保证供给。每年呢就消耗的秸秆和农村的废弃物是20万吨。 二氧化碳的减排量是21万吨，是吧？一个是解决了这个秸秆的焚烧问题，是吧？保证了环境。第二个呢，就是有力地促进了这个农民的额外的收入，是吧？第三个来讲呢，就是在农民给我们企业之间的这个合作方面创造了新的模式。
俺这是这今儿个来是有60多户农民合到一块儿来用过来的。总体来说，每个季节呢都能够收入就是万把块钱。现在咱这农村呢，咱这生活水平越来越高，吃的也好了，穿的也好了，住的也好了，所以俺老百姓心里可高兴。
All these stories feature different people and different circumstances. But they all share the same goal, to build a low-carbon, climate-resilient future. They show that action on climate change is happening on the ground, in communities, large and small, all over the world. But most importantly, they show that there is momentum for change. Change for good.